Thanks everybody for joining us this morning. We have just finished our beautiful affirmation for the week on inspiration. And this week's reading from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita is who are true Christians? Who are true Christians? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Jesus Christ said in chapter 10 of the Gospel of St. John, "All that ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them." Many Christians, not surprisingly, quote this saying in condemnation of other spiritual teachers, not only the Old Testament prophets, but also Buddha, Krishna, and others who lived before Jesus, as well as, by inference, any who came after him. Yet Jesus himself said in St. Matthew chapter 5, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill." Nowhere do we find Jesus condemning or even gently criticizing other spiritual masters. His criticisms were reserved for worldly attitudes and for those hypocritical Pharisees who had allowed religion to become for them a pretense. Paramhansa Yogananda explained that the expression, "all that ever came before me," referred to those spiritual teachers who placed their egos and their self-importance ahead of the Christ consciousness, in the sense of drawing people's devotion to themselves and not offering it where alone it truly belongs to God. Yogananda himself was very firm in this regard. For example, he never spoke of anyone as his disciple. Instead, he always insisted, "They are God's disciples. God is the guru, not I." Ego is a way station on the soul's journey toward enlightenment. The soul is first trapped in lower bodily forms. Slowly, it evolves to the human level, at which point self-consciousness appears. Only in human form can self-consciousness transcend material form altogether, including the lower identity of ego consciousness, and discover the true divine self within. Self-consciousness manifested as ego is an incentive to deliberate self-development. Later in this process of development, however, the ego becomes an obstruction. Inevitably, new spiritual aspirants do not emerge effortlessly from the vortex of ego consciousness. Desire must be offered up resolutely and ever more wholeheartedly on the altar of infinity. It is a gradual process, and few, even among those who seek to help others, are free of ego. If, however, their motive in teaching is not to serve, but to be served, they deserve a severe reprimand as Jesus gave them. For their direction of development is no longer upward, but downward. In the name of giving up desires, they are creating new ones. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 3rd chapter, "Desire obscures even the wisdom of the wise. Their relentless foe it is, a flame never quenched. Intellect, mind, and senses, these combined are referred to as the seat of desire. Desire through them deludes and eclipses the discrimination of the embodied soul. O Arjuna, discipline your senses, and having done so, work to destroy desire, annihilator of wisdom and of self-realization. Give God the credit for everything you do. See him as the true doer. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind." Om. Om. Om.
So beautiful. And it's an interesting week this week because ultimately it's quite simple but very complex as always. Uh, Essentially, what is true Christianity? And really it's Sanatana Dharma, which is the eternal truth. And with that, we're done for the week. Um, but it's interesting, isn't it, how that comes down to, and I think there's two uh, elements that I'd like to share, and one is Sanatana Dharma, truth, and then the other part of that is choice. It's that choice of where we put our energy, and we always hear about inward and outward choices, and I'd like to share to reflect on this week two stories of that Swami shared, that Yogananda shared down the line, and now I'm going to share. Um, and reflect on those because nature's a funny thing that we can often see truth behind. And one, I'm not sure if you've heard about the story of um, there was a story of a burial, a Hindu burial, and there's the process to go through it. And the family were all there, and the grandfather was giving the rites in this process. And as he was gathering around for these rites, there was a stray dog that came in, and he thought, "Oh, this won't be respectful in the circumstance. This is quite a spiritual time." So he said, "What I'll do is he grabbed his grandson and he's pulled his grandson out and helped tie the dog up just outside. And then they went in and performed the rites. Well, generationally, the next generation that came through, the memory of that time was when that grandfather passed away and the rites were going to be done, and the son did those rites, and then the grandchild thought, "Oh, hold on, what did I get involved in during this period of time?" So he said, "Oh, I know what was important. It was important that I grabbed the dog because during that period of time it was interesting." So we went, didn't have a dog, there was no stray dog around, so we went over and grabbed the neighbour's dog and brought it out and tied it up. And it's interesting, isn't it? When you come into it, it's about what is that truth? What have you taken away from a circumstance? And so generationally, the funeral rites happen to be in that lineage, that it was very important to find a dog and tie it up as a part of the funeral rites. And that story is very interesting, isn't it? And the it's often how we perceive, it's our journey, and truth, Sanatana Dharma, is very interesting. And Yogananda brought to the definition um, and definitions those truths. He pulled them out. And so did Jesus. And it was very interesting along this journey. And it spoke about all of these, that everyone is basically on this journey. Sanatana Dharma's truth is that we are a soul, and our only purpose is to merge back with the infinite, merge back with God. And every single one of us, which Yogananda brought, which is Satchidananda, ever knew joy, meaning ever knew is every single soul, center everywhere, circumference nowhere, has that own journey to return back to where it is. And if you think about all the religions, most religions are ever new because every soul is ever new, and then everyone's perception of that journey is ever new. But ultimately, what is important is the underlying truth, that underlying truth of all things. And that journey, or the part of our journey, is recognizing that externally, everything that we do um, isn't truth. It's not everlasting. But internally, that internal journey that we're on, the is where we find the truth, and that truth is always there. And it's quite an interesting um, thing, because there's another story that Swami talked about, which was the musk deer. I'm not sure if you've heard of the musk deer, but these musk deer once a year produce this smell of musk. And it's interesting, the deer absolutely love the smell of musk. And so each one of them are driven crazy trying to find where that smell comes from. And they end up most of the time in a position where they're driven so crazy that they throw themselves off cliffs, they get killed. And if you think about our life, it's what we end up doing, isn't it? We don't we're chasing this external thing to the point of insanity until we all come together like we are now to go, well, what is that truth? What is that truth? What is our musk gland? What is our center everywhere, circumference nowhere, to be able to find that journey? And it's a beautiful thing. And so, what is true Christianity? True Christianity is recognizing that that is our job. Individually, our job is to return back to God. And then, what is our journey as devotees or humanity and society? And it's touched on during that reading that we have to nurture that. Our sole job is not only to recognize that within, but nurture it with every person, every living thing on this planet. Recognize that everyone is on that journey individually, and we are to help and create that. And the interesting thing about community, or the Ananda community, is it's kind of interesting when you hear Swami talk about what is the essence of an Ananda community. He really talks about every one of them being different. He also talks about minimum rules. But there are also rules that have to protect everybody's journey to find that infinite. And becomes quite simple then, doesn't it? It's not about me, it's how what I'm doing may affect somebody else. And so therefore, really, the true Christianity, when Christ was here, it spoke about these laws and how he didn't do anything other than when people's outward journey started interfering with their inward journey, their downward, I used outward, but downward journey down the spine, as opposed to up the spine. And that's when Jesus stood firm. Yogananda stood firm. Swami Kriyananda stood firm. Ananda communities wouldn't exist without that firmness of respect to everybody's journey. And I remember once being slightly pushed in the right direction, because we all do it. We're down at the retreat center where we used to hold it, and I remember being there and being so excited about this path and saying, anyone that I could talk to, I'd be like, "Oh, you need to come along. You need to come along." And Pranava said to me, he said, "Oh, you know what? Our job isn't to bring that person to us. Our job is to help them on their journey." And it's a difference, isn't it? There's a subtle difference in the way that we go through. Our job is to find our truth, which is the same as all truths, but it's ever new. But then it's also not to interfere, it's that personal space, that intervention around. So really true Christianity is about that. And when you think about everything that we do, it's a choice. Our choice is, as we do things, do we recognize that as the truth, or do we recognize it as an external thing? So it answers all those questions in relation to idol worship. So what is idol worship? Well, idol worship's not about an image. It's about how we use that image. It's as we're going about our day, do we think, as I'm here doing this, wow, I'm very amazing at that ability to do what I just did, or geez, I got really down, because it's good or bad, doesn't really matter which one it is. But it's recognizing that ultimately, as we go within, we find these truths. And I'm actually studying at the moment and at university. And of course, the latest topic when you're at university is all around AIs. And how do we get around AIs? How do we put it's so easy to grab an essay and whack it into Chat GPT and go, can you spit out this and answer all these questions? And instantly it's done. And it's so interesting. I was thinking about this the other day and I'm like, this whole journey today, this lesson today is that we have our own Chat GPT. We have that ability to go within and get all the truths. That's what this journey is all about, isn't it? But we have to be still enough to recognize that and do that. We have all, I mean, we don't have one Chat GPT, we've got all, but we've got to go in to find the solutions to all these answers. Autobiography of a Yogi, most of the books we read are all about these amazing journeys where people have actually tried to fix everything and do everything and find everything and get everything. But the minute they stop and go in and ask for help, go in and seek guidance, but not just seek it, sit still enough to wait for the answer. So ultimately, everything is a choice. I can have a choice where I get so hung up on putting flowers and putting devotion to an image, and then that image becomes the most important thing. That's that story of the dog becoming the most important thing. Every time I do something, every time I meditate, I get so hung up on the process of what it is and how it is and what I should be doing and all those kind of things. But recognizing that we're really just channels, aren't we, for everything that we do, we're to go inward and all these things will come through us. It's seeking the eternal truth, letting go of the lifetimes of karma, attachment, outward going, lifetimes from being a tiny speck of coal to being a beautiful dog that wags its tail and is full of joy. But our now job is to get rid of all those, go inwards and seek those things from within in everything that we do. That ultimately is true Christianity. And yeah, like Jesus did, he didn't have it easy. Either did Yogananda, Swami Kriyananda. Those choices of truth aren't going to please everyone. People are going to get offended. People may go off in different tangents. And during that talk, I was thinking, that 1 in 1,000 people will find that true path or find God. It's such an interesting thing, isn't it? But when you think about all the plays that come into the ego play that comes into our lifetimes, and that not only is it's not all of us on that same journey, man, we are trying to find God, but everyone is individual. So we've got to nurture that and we've got to nurture that in each other. And that's really what true Christianity is all about. And I'll just finish with, before I hand it over, to just a beautiful demand to be freed from self-created evil habits and temptations from whispers of eternity. Teach me, O Spirit, to distinguish between my soul's lasting happiness and the temporary pleasures of the senses, touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing. Strengthen my willpower. Teach me not to be enslaved by bad habits. Teach me to be guided only by good habits, formed by good company and meditation. Teach me above all to be guided by the wisdom, thy wisdom. Teach me to shun evil by right judgment and discrimination. Teach me willingly to adapt all good ways, influenced only by inner freedom and not compelled to evil by hardened habits. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Just picking up on the thread of that, there's a really great definition Yogananda gave to what is evil or sin. And it's anything that takes us away from the soul's joy. And that's such a simple thing to be able to tune into is when we're living as a true Christian, i.e., one that is attuning to Christ consciousness, the soul's joy, the soul's attunement to truth, or the divine unity amongst all souls as one in spirit. So when we are taking ourselves away from that unity consciousness, we are harming ourselves. And when we affect each other's soul joy or enthusiasm for the path or attunement to the divine will in their life, that's a form of harm to that soul. And so, as we are members of Ananda and the community, thinking of community as communion with God together, when we break that away from each other, it's a harm, just as it is if we go and choose something that brings us down toward God or away from God is really what it comes down to. And so when we practice that affirmation for inspiration, that's what you were discussing in those stories was, are we attuning to the soul in the present moment and its wisdom and its attunement to God's will? Or are we attuning to a habit, past patterns? I had this really beautiful talk with another devotee over the weekend, and we were discussing how to know when you're acting from the soul versus acting from a habit. And the honestly, we hadn't read that affirmation together, but that's the perfect one because it says you will feel calmness. That is the true inspiration comes from a calm, centered place within the soul. The soul knows that it's the right step. The soul knows that this is something that will bring it closer to Christ consciousness or unity, awareness, that sense of true self acting in this world. And that is our goal because when are we the most in joy is when we're in the soul, true Christians, being up, inward and upward, and attaining that divinity consciousness. And it's that seat of joy here that's the point between the eyebrows. That's also known as the Christ consciousness center, the spiritual eye. So everything that we do that brings us to that space is very simple. Did that bring me into my center? And did I feel an upward flow of energy from a calm place within? And the other thing that we were discussing is what really is our free will to choose the soul, choose to act from the soul. And if you think about your life before the path, didn't it feel like it was on autopilot? It was almost like you were just going through the motions. And when you look back on those times, it's like, was I really even making choices? It was almost like the karmic patterns they would come in with were just being played out. And then as soon as we find Guruji and the path and we start to attune to God, that's when we start to have freedom. We get to act in life. We're awakened. It becomes alive. Everything becomes more of something. There's a more color to life. There's more, everything feels like we're not just in the movie, we're creating something because we're attuning to God as the creator. And then from there, the soul can do what it's meant to do. It can live its purpose. It can share an inspiration that is from the divine. And when we do these things in the world, that is when we are attuning to what is right, to what is truth, to the nature of this world that is meant for us to learn from and to grow and then to share that soul joy with others. And so that is what it really means to be a true believer, faith of the Christ consciousness is to act from that place. So everything that we do as we go into this week, just attuning, is this coming from my soul? It says, this an inspiration from the divine to manifest in this day? Or is this an oopsie? Did I miss the point? Patanjali's second aphorism. We don't want to miss the point. So if we just tune into that throughout this week, practicing that affirmation and just noticing, becoming more aware, where do your actions come from? And so to end today, we have a really beautiful song. It's called God's Call Within. And it's all about listening, listening for the inspiration, for God to share with you. And then you make the choice. Do I listen? Do I act from the soul's inspiration and attunement to spirit? Or do I go about my habit patterns? And so that is all that we're here to do, is to raise the energy with this path of Kriya Yoga, to attune to the joy and then live from there.
Whispering within your soul, hints of laughter, hints of joy, sweet songs of sadness, of quenchless yearning for the light, for my love, your true home. Long your heart has played the dancer, long you've toyed with mirrorless shadows of the treasures left behind you, deep in your soul. Long you've plumbed the dark for answers, long you've begged from beggars empty hands, gifts of life they too were seeking, gifts none could share. Friend, how long will you wander? Friend, as long as you seek your home in a land where all are strangers, love locks the door. Leave to the weakest grave and life to the coward, leave his dreaming. Oh, my saint, wake up, reclaim the light, seek the truth behind all seeming. Leave to the weakest grave and life to the coward, leave his dreaming. Oh, my saint, wake up, reclaim the light, seek the truth behind all seeming. Turn, turn, turn within, in silence of soul, in cave of love, find my abode. Listen, whispering within your soul, hints of laughter, hints of joy, sweet songs of sadness, of quenchless yearning for the light.